There's a moment before the storm, stillness, tension, energy gathering invisibly in the air. You don't see the storm coming, but when it arrives, it commands everything. That moment of silence isn't weakness, it's power collecting itself, and that is exactly how greatness moves in real life. We live in a world obsessed with noise, where people confuse visibility with value, where shouting your goals is seen as progress. But if you study every truly great figure, every empire builder, innovator, disruptor, world shaper, they all understood the same thing. Real power is forged in silence, not announced. It's the quiet hours, the invisible work, the uncelebrated commitment that creates the force others later call genius. The seed doesn't sprout the moment it touches soil. It must first grow downward, anchoring roots, strengthening itself beneath the surface before it ever breaks through into light. And yet, most people want to skip the silent seasons. They want the applause before they built anything worth clapping for. Napoleon Hill said, "Tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it. But even before you show it, you must become it, and becoming takes time, discipline, silence, a private battle between you and your potential. Your vision is not a performance piece, it's a sacred fire, and fire only grows when it's shielded from the wind too early. If you expose your dreams while they're still forming, you invite doubt, distraction, and premature criticism, and those things are poison to belief. Belief must first solidify in solitude. You must learn to walk with the idea long enough that it becomes a part of you, deeply embedded, that even if the world says impossible, you don't flinch. But that level of inner certainty doesn't come from noise. It comes from the hard, unglamorous silence of growth. Think of the greatest minds. Einstein didn't publish first, he thought first. Steve Jobs didn't release the iPhone before he obsessed over every pixel, and every fighter who ever earned a championship belt first bled for years in a gym. No one saw. Their silence wasn't passivity, it was preparation. Because power that is loud before it is strong collapses, but power that is silent until it is ready, that's the kind of force that cannot be stopped. When you stay quiet, you're not hiding, you're listening, you're watching, you're sharpening, you're building depth, while others chase surface level validation. And when you finally speak, when you finally act, your voice will carry weight, not because it's loud, but because it was earned. Don't waste your silence trying to explain your potential. Invest it in developing it, because one day your results will speak for you in a language so loud, no one can ignore it. And the people who once questioned your silence will wish they listened more closely. Your silence is not emptiness, it is power under construction. Every great idea begins as a whisper, not a roar, not a parade, just a fragile thought, a flicker of possibility, barely strong enough to survive its own birth. And in those first few moments, when a vision is young and unproven, it is at its most vulnerable, not to failure, but to doubt. Doubt doesn't always come from within. Often it's injected into your thinking by those around you, well-meaning, practical, cautious voices that see your dream through the lens of their own limitations. The most dangerous thing you can do with a newly formed vision is speak it too soon. Not because your vision isn't worthy, but because it hasn't taken root inside you yet. It's not stable, it's not protected, you haven't lived with it long enough to believe in it more than they doubt it. You see, when you speak your idea prematurely, you invite analysis, opinions, judgment, and judgment always comes faster than understanding. People don't judge your dream based on what's possible, they judge it based on what they can see, and what they can't see, they often attack. But your job is not to convince the world of your idea. Your job is to believe in it enough that the world has no choice but to notice when it becomes real. This is why silence is sacred in the early stages of vision, because it allows you to build belief before you battle resistance. Napoleon Hill taught that faith is the foundation of all achievement, but faith is weakened by the wrong influences. He said, "Tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it." The space between the telling and the showing is where belief is born. You need time to see your vision in your mind's eye uninterrupted. You need time to feel it in your bones, to walk around with it until it becomes part of your identity. And that kind of internal fusion can't happen If you're constantly defending the dream to people who were never meant to carry it, because here's the truth, your vision was given to you, not to them. Not everyone will understand it. Not everyone should. And trying to make them understand weakens the purity of your pursuit. Instead of acting from your vision, you start reacting to their disbelief. In the moment your direction becomes a debate, you've lost power. That's the trap, seeking approval before alignment, sharing prematurely in the name of excitement, but really hoping someone will validate what you haven't yet committed to yourself. Silence isn't about secrecy, it's about sanctity. It's about protecting the idea long enough for it to become real to you, so that when you do act, when you do speak, there's no hesitation in your voice, no gaps for doubt to crawl through. You don't need confirmation from people who don't carry your fire. What you need is time, stillness, obsession, faith, and the courage to walk forward without applause. When you shield your vision with silence, you're not hiding your light. You're allowing it to burn hotter, brighter, stronger, until it becomes undeniable. Guard your vision like it's sacred, because it is. And in the silence, let it become something so powerful. No one's doubt can touch it. We often confuse volume with value. But noise is not movement. Noise is not power. And noise is not progress. The mind that is constantly speaking, defending, reacting has no room left to listen, to observe, or to calculate. It's distracted by its own need to be heard. But the quiet mind, that's where the storm is brewing. If you study high achievers closely, you'll see a pattern that doesn't scream, it whispers. Their breakthroughs don't begin with announcements. They begin with reflection, with clarity, with calm intention that builds behind closed doors. Because while the world performs, the quiet mind prepares. This is a fundamental truth of success. Stillness is not stagnation. Stillness is strategy. It's not about doing nothing. It's about choosing not to do what doesn't matter. And when the time comes to act, the one who has listened longest, focused hardest, and moved with the deepest conviction will always appear more powerful. Not because they had more to say, but because they took longer to say it, and then meant every word. Think about it. When a lion moves through the grass, it doesn't roar. It doesn't announce its presence. It studies, it locks in, it steps lightly, and only at the exact right moment does it explode forward. That is what your action must feel like. Quiet minds are dangerous because they're not seeking attention, they're seeking impact. And they don't strike until they're certain the strike will change the game. This is how Napoleon Hill described the process of definiteness of purpose, working with applied faith. When you remove the need to explain yourself constantly, you give that energy back to your purpose. You become surgical with your thoughts, your intentions sharpen, your moves become meaningful because they're not diluted by external noise. And what does that do? It compounds power. One thoughtful decision is worth 100 rushed ones. One focused hour is worth 1,000 distracted ones. This is the unspoken advantage of the quiet mind. It plays the long game while the noisy mind chases applause. We live in a world where people are addicted to being seen, but the people who really shape the world, who build companies, write history, create movements, don't chase visibility, they chase vision. And vision is born in the silence of thought, not the noise of reaction. Train your mind to become still, not passive but precise. Every time you feel the urge to explain yourself, ask instead, what does my next move need to be? Every time you're tempted to react, ask, is this distraction worth my energy? Or is silence the stronger play? Because in the end, the world won't remember how loudly you spoke. It will remember what you did with your silence. Become the person whose silence makes people curious and whose actions make them never forget. Discipline doesn't need an audience. It doesn't demand recognition. In fact, it does its best work when no one is watching. We talk a lot about motivation, about energy, about inspiration, but none of those things build greatness without discipline. And discipline, it isn't loud, it isn't exciting, it's not glamorous or shareable. Discipline is repetition, it's solitude, it's choosing what matters over and over again without needing a pat on the back to do it. People admire results, but they rarely respect the silence it took to earn them. That's because they don't see the missed parties, the skipped comforts, the endless grind in empty rooms. They see the outcome and assume it happened with ease. But nothing great is built in convenience. It's built in chosen difficulty. Napoleon Hill emphasized that discipline is what bridges desire and manifestation. You can want success, you can visualize it. That's why discipline loves isolation, because it can breathe there, it can focus, it can grow unchallenged by distraction. Look closely at every extraordinary life, and you'll see long chapters of quiet work, work done without applause, without posts, without validation, work done early in the morning when the world is still asleep, work done at night when others are scrolling, binging, relaxing. This is where transformation is born. But if your habits don't align with it, the desire is just noise. Silence gives you the space to build the habits your future demands. It removes the comparison, it removes the chatter, it removes the excuses. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: most people don't lack vision, they lack discipline. And they lack it because they won't step away from the noise long enough to hear themselves. They fear silence, because in silence, excuses die. There's no one else to blame, it's just you and the mirror. That's why the champions, athletes, artists, thinkers, creators, they train in isolation. Not because they're antisocial, but because they understand the battlefield of discipline is not out there. It's within. It's in whether you choose your goal over your craving, your future over your comfort. That choice is made in quiet spaces where no one can interfere. If you wait to be surrounded by support, encouragement, or praise to act, you will fail the second they're taken away. But if you build your discipline in isolation, if you can say yes to your future when no one's watching, you become unstoppable when people finally do. So the next time you find yourself alone, grinding, doubting, wondering if it's worth it, remember this: you are in the sacred space where champions are made. That silence isn't punishment, it's preparation. Because what the world calls loneliness, the discipline calls focus. And what the world calls sacrifice, the discipline calls alignment. Greatness isn't about who celebrates you when you win, it's about who you became when no one was looking. Let the world doubt you. Let them ignore you, just don't ever let that silence go to waste. There's a law few people speak about, but everyone lives under: the law of conservation of energy. Not just physical energy, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy too. And the more you talk, the more you give it away. People confuse talking about a thing with doing the thing. They think explaining their vision is part of building it, but what they're really doing is leaking the power that was meant to be used within. Every time you share your next move prematurely, you're bleeding momentum, giving away your fuel to people who don't even need to hear it. You see this in people who talk big but move small. They post their goals, shout their intentions, make promises out loud, hoping it'll lock them into action. But it usually does the opposite. When you speak your intentions too early or too often, the mind begins to believe it's already done something. Just because it talked about it, that's not progress, that's deception. Napoleon Hill warned against this kind of mental waste. He taught that power is focused effort. Power builds when you hold it within, when you concentrate your thoughts, your emotions, your purpose, and channel them all into action, not announcement. Power builds in silence. It dies in overexposure. There's something sacred about keeping your goals between you and the mirror. It creates a fire that's not diluted by the need for praise or permission. But the moment you start outsourcing your belief, telling others in hopes they'll cheer for you weaken the internal bond you were supposed to forge with your future. Here's what most won't admit: talking feels good, validation is addictive, and when people praise your idea, your brain releases dopamine before you've even earned the result. It's a false reward, a shortcut, and shortcuts never lead to strength. Think of your energy like a battery. Every conversation, every post, every explanation drains a little of that charge. So the question becomes, are you leaking energy trying to be understood, or are you conserving it to become undeniable? There's a reason the most powerful people say the least. They don't move emotionally. They move strategically. Their silence isn't a void, it's a vault. They guard their energy so that when it's time to act, there's no hesitation, just pure directed force. When you stop talking and start executing, you enter a different category. You become rare, quiet, focused. And the quieter you become, the more clearly you hear your own calling. Not the noise of the crowd, not the pressure of perception, but the truth of what must be done. People often ask, should I tell people my goals? The real question is, why do you want to? Is it to inspire or to be admired? Because if you need applause to move forward, you've already given away your power. Protect it, seal it. Let your silence become the forge in which you harden your resolve. Because when the time is right, your results will speak louder than your words ever could. The world will listen not because you asked them to, but because your discipline demanded their respect. Save your breath. Use it to build. Let your silence grow into something the world cannot ignore. The ego always wants to speak first. It wants credit before contribution. It wants attention before action. It wants to be seen even when it has not yet earned the right to be heard. That's why silence is not just strategy. It is a form of self-mastery. Because to remain silent when you could speak, when your ego wants to speak, requires strength. It demands clarity about who you are and what you are here to do. Most people never reach that point. They confuse noise with identity. They mistake applause for affirmation. But when you are silent by choice, not by fear, you are telling the world, I don't need validation to keep becoming. Napoleon Hill understood that the most dangerous threat to success is not failure. It is ego, the ego that wants to tell everyone what it's going to do before it's even started. The ego that becomes addicted to recognition and loses its edge. The ego that would rather look like it's winning than actually win. And this is where silence becomes your greatest weapon. When you hold your words, you're not holding back your power. You're conserving it. You're sharpening it. You're telling your ego, we don't need to explain ourselves. We need to prove ourselves. The ego is loud, but purpose is quiet. Purpose doesn't shout. It guides, it moves without needing to be announced. And when you align with your purpose instead of your ego, silence becomes your shield. This is why silence isn't weakness. It's confidence, it's emotional control. It's the ability to delay expression in service of execution. Think about the people who make the greatest impact, true leaders, visionaries, creators. They don't speak constantly, they listen, they study, they move deliberately. And when they do speak, the world listens because their words are backed by experience, by sacrifice, by the weight of having done the work. Your ego wants to impress. Your spirit wants to improve. And that difference matters. One keeps you talking, the other keeps you growing. When you silence the ego, you become dangerous in the best way, unshakable. Immune to flattery, immune to criticism, because your identity is no longer attached to what people say. That's rooted in what you know. And when you know who you are, you don't need to announce it. Let others rush to be seen. Let them waste energy branding what they haven't built you. You go to work. You build the thing. You become the person. You earn your peace in silence.